Welcome back to the STEM Career Accelerator. I'm Bobby Sass. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about the 5 worst mistakes you could make when it comes to finding your career specialty. The first one is not having a wide enough perspective. We have to have our deep purpose because this deep purpose connects across many points within our lives and within our career. This deep purpose is not something that limits our perspective. It's something that creates a wide perspective because it is so essential, is at our core. That is what the deep purpose is all about. If you meditate, if you pray, if you swim, if you walk, if you breathe, even when you take a shower, we can get into the brainwave state that we want in order to increase the amount of focus that we have, to decrease the amount of noise that we have going on in our brains, and to really hone in on the things that we want and that we can do and that we will do. Through this process, we actually widen our perspective. And if we really want to avoid having a narrow perspective, we got to keep up with newness. We need new things in our lives. We got to travel to new places. We need to meet new people. We need to read different things. We need new hobbies. We have to constantly try different things and do different things so that we can think different things, so that we can then get to what our specialty is, so that we can get towards developing our expertise. So how are you going to broaden your perspective today? Number 2 is not being narrowly focused enough. Now, this may seem polarizing, and it is polarizing, but it's not exactly the same thing to say that we need a wide perspective, but also to have some narrow focus. Because what this comes down to is that specialist skills are not about particular tasks. They are actually abilities. And they are abilities that allow you to excel at certain types of tasks. So in focusing on those abilities, we got to make sure that we don't have our skills cluttered up, that our abilities are defined. And career clutter is not the same thing as a wide perspective. Career clutter is just disorganized skills. It is the result of lacking a clear vision for your career. And so while we may think that, oh, I can do a million different things, I'm a jack of all trades, that's not the same thing as a wide perspective on your specialty. You have to get specific. And in getting specific, you can then get organized. So if you've got a bucket full of all kinds of knives and other cutting tools, maybe what you need to do is focus down on certain types of knives and getting them into some sort of order, so that when you need the right knife for the right job or the right skill for the right task, then you can cut through and apply it specifically. The first thing you need to do in order to make sure that you are in balance with this, that you're wide enough in your perspective and that you are narrowly focused enough, is you've got to write down what you know. And so if you go back to the previous exercise where we talk about the skill set table, maybe now is the time for you to really get deep into that skill set table, to really start listing out the skills that you have, both soft skills and technical skills. And then when you start to identify the gaps, when you start to see the things that you don't know, research that and write those down. Write down what you learned in that process of research. Don't just read something and then let it evaporate. Make sure that you're going into your career journal and you're writing all of this down. The third worst mistake you can make when developing your specialty is thinking that specialists aren't also generalists. We commonly think of this dichotomy of generalist versus specialist, but the reality is that a T-shaped professional is a specialized generalist. It is a professional who has developed a broad base of generalist skills, but has chosen to narrowly focus into a specific area and develop a specialization towards developing an expertise. That is really the mark of a T-shaped professional. Generalists are competent in several areas of skills. So this is different than saying that you're a jack of all trades. A jack of all trades is not the same thing as a generalist. Because remember, the old saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none. And that implies that you're not necessarily competent in any of those, or that you have a minimum level of competence. But generalists are fully competent in several areas of skill. So for instance, this fella is competent in at least two areas. One is he can play the flute. Two is he can tame a venomous snake. And three, the key is to align your skills. Expertise comes out of specializing in some aspect of your generalist skills. This is why it's called the T-shaped professional, is that you start with that broad foundation of generalist, and then that narrows down into expertise. And so it's not just the top of the T existing off in space somewhere, and then the bottom of the T is existing off in some other space where you have two wildly different generalist and specialist skill sets. That's not how this works. You need to align your specialized skills with your generalized skills. Your specialized skills will arise from an alignment with your generalized skills. The fourth worst mistake that you can make is not attracting the right mentor. And if you recall, I've said this before, don't seek mentors, attract them. Now, how are you going to do this? You're going to put yourself in the right situations. So you're not going to go out and suddenly find a mentor. That's not how you do this. You put yourself into the right situations. You get a feel for the room. You get a feel for who's there. You ask around. And then maybe you're like, oh, this person sounds interesting. And you go for the most interesting people. And then you have a conversation with them. You have to put yourself out there. And you have to be coachable. You have to be someone who is approachable, who can take criticism, who can take instruction, who can take advice and implement it and go back and tell their mentor how well you did in implementing their advice. You've got to have courage and you must be proactive. It takes courage to put yourself into the right situation. It takes courage to be coachable. It takes courage to go out there and proactively say to someone that you're interested in the first thing, to introduce yourself, to tell them what you're interested in. See if there is alignment there. And then, if you're approaching them with reciprocity, with gratitude, then you're able to attract this mentor in. Because they see that not only are you courageous and that you could be somebody that they could teach, but you're also somebody they want to teach because they just can tell that you're a good person, that you're going to appreciate what they are doing for you. Because mentorship is often something that in the professional atmosphere is done for free. It's not chargeable time. It's not something that we get paid to do as part of our full-time role necessarily. It's often something that happens in the coffee shop, or it's something happens because somebody's taken you under their wing and they've become a mentor to you. And the number 5 worst mistake is thinking that you are on a fixed path if you specialize. There's a key word in here that we don't like. Fixed path. It means the same thing as a fixed mindset. But we are working on an abundance mindset and a growth mindset. That is where success in your career transformation truly lies. And you're not fixed if you're constantly exploring, if you're continuously learning, continuously improving. And I'd suggested previously that perhaps with exploring new specialty skill sets, you could do this at least every 3 years, where you take some time to figure out what specialist skill set am I going to work on? This one sounds interesting. You try it out. And if it doesn't work, within a month or a few months, switch to something else. But at some point within a 6-month period of time, You want to come up with a new specialty skill set that you are going to focus on and keep with it for at least 3 years. And through that process, over the course of a decade, you'll have developed 3 specialty skill sets, or perhaps an actual expertise, because you'll have seen what works well and you'll continue to align each subsequent specialty skill set with previous ones. That is how expertise works. It gets stacked up like that. And the great news is that if you already have tons of skills, which most working professionals who have a STEM degree do, there's only going to be slight shifts that you need to make in order to basically bridge the gaps in your skill sets. That can lead to expertise in itself. You don't have to completely restart. Because if you can identify, for instance, using the skill set table as a start, identify the gaps that you have, then maybe there's only a slight shift or one area that you need to fill in, or a few areas you can fill in. And then you bridge all those gaps, and suddenly you're like, oh, I've actually charted out my expertise. And then you know how to go and get it, and you can go get it. And this old adage of old dogs can't learn new tricks, well, fortunately, we're not dogs. We're humans. We're STEM professionals. And so what we need to do is we need to just build on our strengths. So if you're building on your strengths, then that means that there is nothing limiting you. Your age doesn't limit you. The fact that there's something new that you have to learn just means that it's something you've done before. You've learned something new many, many times before, and you'll just need to apply yourself. And in applying yourself, you have to find the way to get into that new skill, into that new knowledge base, by figuring out where your greatest strength lies. What previous foundational skill do you have that you're strong in that could be the place where you start to build for this new skill? All right, I'll see you in the next session.